to be Samuel D. Sosa from Oi Bardic Fury. That you joined us tonight. So here, let's just get applause from the audience here really quickly. Okay, excellent. All right, thank you guys. I love you all very much. All right, appreciate it. All right, or do you have a username or some other name?
Use my real name. Can you run the intro by me again? Were you just recording were you recording the intro for the episode? I kind of zoned out for a sec.
Oh, yeah, no, we're recording right now. You're live, man. You're live on TV.
Oh my god. We're live. We're hot.
Yeah, no, you're being animated in front of a live studio audience, so you gotta get, like...
Oh my god. You might want to trim that part out. Can we take a pause for a sec?
But yeah, no, okay, no, and I know you probably, like, up in Canada, it's, very far away. You probably smoked your breakfast.
Yeah.
So, here, we'll start over again. So, what's your name?
My name's Aiden, and I'm the author of Pizza Time, the online comic.
Oh, yes. It has the name Pizza in it, so, I'm already sold. So, tell us more about your comic. How long have you been drawing your comic?
This one, it's hard to pin an exact date. I'm going to say like 5 or 6 years I've been drawing these characters, and it'll be the sort of thing where first couple of years come and go from it here and there. I'll draw like a comic, put it up, wait like a year, do another comic. So I've been doing it more seriously for like the past year, I guess.
I see. So you come out with about like an issue every year or so.
Originally, yeah, and thankfully I think most of that early stuff from 5 or 6 years ago is like lost to time, because it'd be great if no one ever saw it again.
Yeah.
So more recent stuff. But yeah, more recent stuff last year or so has been a little more consistent, I guess.
Yeah, no, I got some Superman comics I drew a long time ago that I'd rather have people not see. So
yeah, at the time they seemed okay, but now in retrospect, like, oh wow, I'll come across those old files, like, oh, that looks fucking awful. But yeah, the current iteration, I'd say like a year or so, like, try to keep it consistent.
I got a question for you. Okay, so any of your characters in your comic, were they conceived when you were a kid?
No, actually. You would think so, because it's all just like food. But no, it was 5 or 6 years ago. I think I was just like doodling in one of my sketchbooks. And I think like the entire thought process, start to finish, was like, wouldn't it be funny if there was like a dude with a slice of pizza for a head? So, yeah.
That is pretty damn funny.
I'm glad you think so. I mean, you're like kind of the target audience, being a pizza guy, but
pizza is my life, so yeah.
It hasn't come up in the comic yet, but like the idea that talking, living food people coexist with just normal humans who eat and stuff is potential source of conflict. Kind of a terrifying idea, so I'm not sure how deep I'll ever want to get into it.
Yeah, no, I haven't even thought about that. So the food people obviously eat the food. So I mean, it's like it reminds me of this PETA post, or like I think it was PETA or something. It was like, where do you draw the line when you eat meat? And it's like has a straight line from like cow to like chicken to pig.
They just have like pizza on one end. It's like, will you eat the talking food man?
It's like, well, I'll eat a pizza, but I'm not going to eat a pizza if it looks at me, you know what I mean? It's like...
And it's like, would you eat would you feel comfortable eating a pizza around that guy too, or would it be
like, would that make
too weird?
Or it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
it's like, and then here's things like, how do you even address things like that? It's like, do you stand up and be like, yo, dude, are you okay with this, bro? And it's like, and when he looks at you, he's like, why wouldn't I be okay with it? It's like, you gotta fucking eat.
Exactly.
I gotta fucking eat. Right?
Yeah, it would be horrifying. I think it's there's such a focus now on a lot of modern cartoons for like world building and lore and stuff, and it's mostly something I'm kind of trying to avoid right now, just because it begs so many questions about that.
Oh yeah.
Like how, like, do the food people eat food? It's kind of like how Arthur has like a pet dog, even though he's an animal. So yeah, it's like I don't really know what the food people eat. I'll try to avoid addressing that if I can. Yeah, it just implies a lot of horror, I guess.
I see. So no, it's fascinating that you're talking about avoiding lore and world building, and I think sometimes it's better to just leave questions that are up in your head and to leave them unanswered, and you as the audience can come to your own conclusions. And I think that's the best kind of world building, where it's like they just give you just enough to come to your own conclusions, but you can speculate and argue. I think a perfect example would be like Joker from The Dark Knight. You could look at his character and be like, oh, well, some people speculate that he could be a Iraq War veteran. Be like, well, that's an interesting theory. What do you have to support that? It's like, he does, he knows, like, do terrorist ops. He references it. It's like, it's a very interesting theory. And it just brings up the question. I think sometimes you just need to bring up the question. And also sometimes, it's interesting to be like, well, solving the mystery. And, I was reading this one good example, or someone was mentioning, he was talking about, chasing dragons. Like, for instance, let's say you're making a story about chasing dragons in the real world. So you got your characters, they're going on their big adventure, and they're going all across the world, and eventually they realize that dragons don't really exist,
Yeah.
So do you have your characters go out in space and look for dragons in the hope, or where do you go on? So it brings up that kind of question too. So, but more about your comic, Pizza Time. Tell us about some of your star characters. Now, I was briefly browsing through your newest alliteration, or your newest one, where you have Gertie with a little bit of a redesign.
Yeah.
And I mentioned, I was overreading that in the thread. You were showing some of your peers the character design, and they're like, "Oh, well, this character looks really young," and you're like, "Oh," and I thought that was really fascinating that you took that to heart and you redesigned your character to look more mature, like a woman-like.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of like drinking and smoking in the comic. Because even though they're all cartoon characters, they got like buggy eyes and talking food and shit. It's mostly, I think the newest version, kind of black and white, actually paneled out comics is the closest I've gotten to like the vision I have for it, which is, I guess, slice of life. I guess like kind of down to earth.
Yes,
a lot of the stories are kind of based on things that happen to me or my friends.
Yeah.
So it's like they're cartoon characters, but they're not going to be throwing anvils on each other or anything. So the old design works better with like some of the stuff I was doing like this time last year, where it was like full color, totally different format. And that was stuff I got to the point where I realized like I was, I guess, kind of putting the cart before the horse, where I was trying to format it in a way that was like really social media friendly. Like scrolling through Instagram sort of formatted. And I realized don't give a shit about social media. It's like I'd rather tell much funnier stories.
Yeah, no, I don't care about that. I think the really, fun of it all is the book, because I don't think of Admiral Pizza so much as a web comic. It's just a comic that happens to conveniently be on the web, but where the real action is the book. Yeah, that's where it's at. I know what you mean, but no. Something.
Yeah, no, exactly. I wanted to like reframe it as like the web's our best outlet right now. So I don't have the money to get stuff on paper and into stores and everything. So I'm going to draw the comic I want as if it were a paper comic that you have in your hands, and maybe one day. So yeah, I guess to loop back to what you were asking originally with that design, I guess it was just because like all the characters are doing like either drinking and smoking or morally reprehensible things, like plotting schemes against each other. So it's like I don't totally want someone to think that's like a kid. And then next panel she's like drunk driving and like throwing cigarette butts at people or something. So yeah,
it's funny because personally, I would just roll with that straight because that'd be fucking hilarious.
That's the thing. I would think that's funny, but also like it's a good sounding board to show stuff to your friends who aren't comic creators or even necessarily comic readers. Because if you get a little too down the rabbit hole of like, I'm only making this comic for huge comic nerds, the stuff I'm making is like pretty specific and pretty personal, but I don't want it to be so obtuse that like anyone outside of comic creation doesn't get it. Because a lot of other, like you and other comic creator guys online, I think kind of understood from the start. That character in particular, Gertie's supposed to be like same age as Pete, and I kind of envision them as like early 20s.
Well, I will.
But yeah, you show it to average whoever who maybe doesn't read a ton of comics or manga, and they're going to see like a short person with a big head and be like, what's that kid doing all this like horrible shit?
It's funny you mention that because I definitely was thought the same thing. I thought like Gertie was Pete's like cousin or something. And I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, okay, and then I could easily see Gertie as Pete's like romantic interest or like
but on the same level.
And then it's like, oh, okay, but it's funny because then you get to know the character more, and then you understand. But I thought that was fascinating. You're just like, well, I wanted to show this character is mature, and that's good. That's an example of a good redesign because it shows.
Thanks.
But
I do like the current one a lot more, and it is just a matter of like practicing for the past year. I think Pete's also been redesigned, but it's like a lot more subtle than the Gertie one.
Yeah, I saw a sketch or something on one of your medias of Pete, and he looked fantastic. So. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's all practice, which is like I'm getting a little better at keeping a consistent sketchbook. Because before it's like I have the idea, it's like I gotta get this out there, and then kind of rush to, finish something and get it out there. But then the end result is like, that could have been better if I'd spent like a couple weeks practicing. So. Okay, they've all been through redesigns, but Gertie was definitely the most drastic.
Yeah, no, speaking of self-censoring, what are some examples of other examples of you kind of self-censoring? Well, I mean, that wasn't necessarily self, that was like audience peer review. You're showing this, and a lot of people were like, well, I don't necessarily understand this character, but what are some examples of you working on your stuff, and you're like, no, I can't do this is too far, or just examples of self-censoring?
Yeah, it hasn't totally come up yet. And I'm not super concerned with, like, censoring in the sense that you might get in trouble for putting something out there. It's, like, not a lot that's, like, within the realm of what I want to write that I consider, like, potentially causing trouble or whatever.
Do you put your stuff, like, on a rating? Like, I'm not going to write past, like, R level or, like, PG-13, or how do you
not really. Yeah, not really. That's a good question because I haven't really hit that point. I also think in terms like I haven't done that much, at least with this comic. I guess with the current comic, I wouldn't let like little kids read it, but I'd say like young teen, even like above 12. If you've read other comics, it's not going to be anything too crazy extreme. But I guess I'm thinking maybe more in terms of like shows and stuff. So many shows now are like a little more realistic and down to earth with like displaying like day-to-day life. I think maybe overall, like, a kid will also be really bored with the comic in terms of, like, what I'm intending to do with it, too, because it'll be, like, very, I guess,
heavy.
Yeah, a little very, like, slice of life or whatever. It's, like, not going to be super action-packed. But, yeah, I haven't totally taken that into consideration if I was to give it a rating or anything.
It's funny you're talking about, kids reading messed up comics, and you know what I was just thinking about? Well, this is probably why I'm absolutely so fucked up, is that my earliest memories are me going into, like, my dad's storage or whatever, and he had all these old National Lampoon magazines.
Right. Oh, man, yeah, like 70s stuff?
Yeah, the old 70s. He actually had the whole collection at one point, and I remember reading a lot of those comics, and, like, oh my god, they're so fucked up. Like, I remember this one, there was, like, these guys, they have, like, these ice picks, and they're going from, like, door to door, knocking on them. Have, like, they have little peephole, and they're, like, stabbing the little hole guys.
Oh, my God. Yeah, good kid stuff,
Oh, okay. You know what? The weirdest comics I ever remember was that, there's the stories about, finding comics in the, old magazines and, pornos in the woods.
Like a stash in the woods, right? Yeah, that's never happened to me. I've heard of it, but it's like, is that a real thing?
Yes, it is, apparently. So, like, yeah, I remember my brother, he's like, oh, check out this stuff. There's, like, these really, really weird comics. Like, I don't know, they were, like, underground comics. Like, there was this one comic, like, this guy was, like, split in half into sections. Like,
Jesus.
Yeah, Animatrix, when they're, like, cutting this guy up, and then...
Yeah. Especially, like, the era of stuff, like, that was coming out when we would have been kids, like, really, like, edgy, extreme 90s comics.
Well, there's always been a weird underground market, and then also considering these were probably, God knows where these were printed, they could have been, like, anywhere, yeah, like, limited run of really weird stuff, so... Yeah, so in terms of my own stuff, like, the violence stuff doesn't totally, like, appeal to me. I think I'd be, like, so completely alien to the stuff I'm doing now. It's like, I can't imagine it. It's like, Yeah, well, violence is definitely appealing to adolescents, don't get me wrong. I did have my little violence bout animation comics.
Yeah, I can like reading that stuff once in a while. So yeah, it's like, I guess if I were to try to censor anything, it's like, stay away from, like, explicit violence.
I'm in the mood for ultra violence, so. But yeah, definitely depending if I'm in the mood for violence. So,
I can appreciate it if it's, like, got a real satirical bend, like a RoboCop or Starship Troopers sort of vibe to it, where it's like, yeah, it's super fucking violent, but it's kind of satirizing, like, the celebration of that violence too.
So it has to
I guess, like, if there's a bigger point,
it has to make you think, is what you're saying.
Basically, yeah. What's the purpose behind this stuff? And it's like, yeah, so many really, like, edgelord comics and stuff can just be like, all right, and it's a lot of splatter and violence for the sake of it. But I want thinky violence.
Because you got the violence and the bloodshed for the young children, and the idiots. But then you have the intelligent, questions. It's like, what is the ethical ramifications of having an airship that can kill everyone? Which is issues that
That's the thing, it's like, you can, and you'll have an audience that might just enjoy it on, like, a surface level, too. And they'll be like, yeah, violence, awesome. So, yeah, that's fine, too. You can read it on a couple different levels.
Okay, well, we're hitting the 20-minute mark, and we got to reach a break for our next guest. But it was really awesome having you on, Aiden. And,
yeah, for sure, dude.
Hopefully we can do another episode. Maybe when you got some time off on a Monday, you could join us with one of our guests.
Yeah, I'd love to, dude.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep you updated, and I'll see you next Monday.
All right, man. Take it easy. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, absolutely. Thanks for joining us. All right, here. Let's just have a big cheer for the audience here.